Okay, let's talk about what you have to do if you've got leaky exhaust manifolds on your Triton V-10 or V8 or whatever. This is in a 2001 Excursion. So we've got iron manifolds on aluminum heads and a lot of corrosion and rust. I don't know if this thing was buried in a lake or what, but they're just all crapped out. So step one is get the thing up in the air, pull your wheels off, and remove that fender liner. So to do that, there's three 8mm bolts with a big fat fender washer. One, then there's one up here, then there's one up here. Okay, then you're gonna have 5.5mm little screws holding the edge of the fender liner and the fender. And once you have those bolts out, I used an impact to get those out because on this vehicle they were just super rusty. And there's not really a good way to spray penetrating lube from the engine cavity to get all the threads nice and loose before you pull it out. So use impact driver, get those out. And then you've got a couple of these plastic retainers holding the wiring harness to that fender liner. Just push those through. And then you'll kind of have to manipulate and fold, kind of wrestle with that liner to get it out. So here it sits. And then you have, pretty clear access to the exhaust manifold. You might want to disconnect these harness plugs if you're worried about matching things up. I'm sure they only mate, like this one goes to that one goes to that one. You probably can't mix them up. If you're concerned about it, get some ink pens and do like white dot, orange dot, orange dot, something like that. So you can unplug them and blow it out with compressed air and all that, just to make it easier to unplug. Push them to the side. If you really want a lot of room, you could take your shock off and remove this shock tower, the mount. You've got 3 bolts that go through the frame set, so you can get that out of the way. Then you have a pretty open window, and the driver's side is worse than the passenger because we've got the steering shaft going through there and all these wires and stuff that's not on the passenger side. But once you get through there, you can see you've got pretty clear access to the manifold. And you can see on this vehicle, I mean, they're just so corroded and rusted. That one has already been broken off. There's one on the bottom that's already been broken off. Actually, 2 of them. So this one's missing. That's probably broken off inside the cylinder head. That one you can still see the edge of it. So as soon as you put a socket on there and start to try and remove those nuts, you could try and heat it with a torch first. You don't want to get that aluminum cylinder head too hot doing that. I would advise just go ahead and snap them off. They're going to break probably inside the cylinder head. On the passenger side, I actually had 9 of 10 break off in the head. But I've already done this passenger side. I did not remove the shock tower or anything. Just pulled out the fender liner, and this was plenty of room. I'll show you the tools that I used to do this. But there's 5 on top for the V10 and 5 on bottom. Tapped out the holes, anti-seize, new studs go in, new gaskets, manifold goes back on. So let's see what tools I used. Okay, here's a pretty good rundown of what I used. These are the factory gaskets, by the way. You've got this. One piece does 3 holes, another piece does 2 holes, then you got this lone straggler. The Fail Pro replacement is 5 individual gaskets per side, but they just hang on the stud. So here it tells you what side is top. So you're gonna put it up there like that, and they're gonna basically center themselves on those studs before you put the manifold on, and they'll stay put. You don't really have to worry about them jumping off while you're trying to get that manifold back on there. But this is basically what I used: a bunch of fresh drill bits, some speed out, easy out, screw extractor stuff. This kit is actually from Harbor Freight. I found it to be much better than the more expensive stuff like the Irwins. They just snapped immediately. These are holding up really well. Just get a couple of kits in case something does happen. You don't want to make multiple trips to the store. It's better to have extra stuff and then bring it back to the store when you're done if you don't need it. These are pretty cool. Milwaukee makes these, I think. Yeah. So it's a drill bit and a tap in one. So that's great for virgin material if you want to tap a hole and make some threads at the same time. But they're really sharp and they cut really well. These are also Milwaukee shockwave bits, titanium. They cut through the aluminum real easy, but they also cut through those lug studs surprisingly well. Get some new drill bits as well. Now, obviously these are impact drill bits, and I'm using this right angle adapter from Milwaukee and my impact gun, and it works awesome. It's got a magnetic base. You just pull the bit out, change it when you're ready to go to a bigger one. And this allows you to put your impact driver gun in there at an awkward angle, and then you can go straight in perpendicular, you know, to the head. You just have to have a good eye for holding stuff straight. I didn't use the template that you bolt to the head and, you know, put the bit in a certain way or whatever. I just kind of eyeballed it, and it turned out well for the passenger side. I've also got some resurfacing stuff, so you can put that in this right angle drill and clean up the head while it's still in the car. Sometimes the bits are too long because you're operating between the frame rail and the cylinder head, so you might not have enough room to stick this in there. You might with a smaller, shorter bit. I guess you could hack them down and then just sink this down in that throat a little bit more. I've got a couple of little screwdrivers here, so whenever you drill out that lug stud that's broken in the hole, let's say you drill out 80% of that, but some of the threads are still stuck in the cavity in the cylinder head, you might get lucky and be able to stick a screwdriver in there and kind of pry it down. And when you fold it over, then you could reach in that hole, grab it with some needle nose, and yank it out. That worked, you know, on 2 or 3 of the holes on the passenger side. Otherwise, just keep drilling until you get the hole large enough to send a tap through there. That's a metric 8 by 1.25. So tap it, back it out, tap it, back it out, tap it, back it out. Keep your hole clean with some compressed air. And that's pretty much it. You want to make sure that you put some anti-seize on there so it doesn't make you cuss next time you want to take something apart. Occasionally I would use a little punch whenever I drilled through the stud. First, you want to try and punch a little center mark right in the middle of that stud that's broken in the cylinder head, and that'll make it easier for your drill bit to kind of have that center. Otherwise, you know, it might walk around a little bit and you start drilling more to one side, then it's easy to kind of cut into the cylinder head. You don't really want to do that. You want to try and keep your drill bit just inside that lug stud, and whenever you drill that out enough, then you can send one of your screw extractors in that hole and start turning counterclockwise, and hopefully they'll just come out. Some of them might put up more of a fight where you just have to drill the hole out bigger and then just go ahead and retap it like you're just tapping a fresh hole. And now that I've got the exhaust all taken apart, I'm going to take the opportunity to go ahead and cure this factory bottleneck. So this is the Y pipe that comes off left manifold, right manifold, and comes towards your pipe for the catalytic converter. So I'm going to make some paint marks here to keep this lined up, cut this out, and put a section of pipe in there to get rid of that restriction. Now you can buy just this section of this Y pipe, so you'd make a cut here, here, and here, and weld the new section back in that's unrestricted. It's like 120 bucks. I'm just going to take some loose pipe, cut it out, weld it in, it'll be fine. So in general, that's how you cure broken exhaust manifold studs on your Triton Ford engine. It's a real bear. It took me all day to do the passenger side, so plan for a couple of days or a full weekend and just take your time with it.